Sculpture, tapestry, photos and poetry, both spoken and carved. Otobong Nkanga's work is impossible to pigeonhole, unlimited to one medium, and it encompasses immense and global questions. As the award-winning artist's first major monographic show opens here in Paris at the Museum of Modern Art, she joins us on Arts24 to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Otobong.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Now, I was so interested in the title of this exhibition because it's called the very poetic I Dreamt of You in Colours. I believe there's a personal story attached to this. Can you tell us about
Yes, it's very personal. I remember in my teenage years and I was considering what to study. I love architecture and I loved art, so it was a very difficult choice. And I was having a conversation with my mother and she said, I dreamt of you in colours. And I believe, if you want, whatever you have to do, you have to have the passion for it. And you can always do architecture in art. And that was the moment everything changed. And I decided I'm going to study art.
Wow, what a dream. And she was right, in fact. Now, your installations and pieces we see here often underline the beauty of the natural world, make us think about our relationship with it as well. Here in Paris, you've got living plants featured in some of the installations. What's their role in the gallery space?
I think the role of the living plants are ways of thinking of commemoration, ways of also showing us the other life forms that are engaged with us, that make us also survive, that relationship to oxygen, to air, to chlorophyll, to all the other life forms that make it possible for we humans to exist.
Remind us definitely that we're living in a very fragile ecosystem. And among the works showed in Paris, there's one, In Pursuit of Bling, that really caught my eye, a fascinating installation. It's got plenty of different objects, different media. Bling, that word, is very evocative. It makes us think about opulence, decoration, maybe even vulgarity. What does it mean in the context of this piece?
In the context of this piece, we're looking at minerals. We're understanding what mineral does to us. Even our makeup, what is on my skin now, is filled with talc, mica, all kinds of things that are coming from the earth. And that relationship also to the materials that we work with, that allows us to communicate, the copper. And then when we look at, the malachite, it gives us 67% of copper. But it's also a way of thinking about something that blinks and shines, and the next moment it's away, it's gone. It's like a sound. It appears and it disappears.
Now, you are this year's Nasher Prize winner. That's a very prestigious award for sculpture, and it involves staging a show at the Nasher Sculpture Center in Texas, in Dallas. Land, I think the red earth of Texas and Mexico, was a big part of your show there. It's a really politically charged zone, that part between America and Mexico, in terms of immigration, trade. How did that geography inspire you?
Well, the southern part of America has always been charged with its histories and also the Civil War and all the things that came with violence in relation to people that were brought in to work on the land. But at the same time, we have the southern borders, we have the trade wars that are going on, and that relationship now with America and Mexico. And for me, being in that place was so important to be able to make a work, and the soap work I made was linked to the elements that come from the region, but also talking about the migration of goods, the migration of food, how that enters into Americans and Southern America. But also the soaps that were made were also donated to a foundation which would help with migrants and things like that. So, it was totally to consider that relationship of land, but also of care, of making, craftsmanship, and all these things are things that I'm interested in my work.
And the human aspect is very, very, very present there,
Yeah.
Now, I notice you often use rocks in your pieces, either as objects or sculpting stone. And as an artistic material, it must be pretty tough to work with, very resistant to human intervention. And then you use textiles, which is almost the opposite, very soft, maybe more yielding. What sort of toolbox does a tapestry, for example, provide you with as an artist?
Well, the tapestry, what is incredible about tapestry is that we've been doing it for years. So I went to visit the collection of Pompeii, and I found in that collection a rope that was made 17 AD, before. And I was looking at it and I was like, wow. And you see also fabrics that were there, but were burnt and charred. And within African context or even European context, they've always been an important part of tapestry. And so for me, the softness of the material, if I look at the verdure, you also see the stories that are told through tapestry, the yarns that I use that, show opulence and richness. And then the stones are something that are from time. They're my ancestors within that. It's been burnt and charred and melted to form into something solid. So there's always a history behind the material, and I'm interested in those histories behind them.
And as well as working with materials for your installations, like objects or paintings or sculptures, you also create performances. You use your own body, your voice. How do you think the voice, sound, can be shaped or sculpted?
The voice is the true reflection of our emotions and what we think. And when you're singing, you cannot lie because you're really, if you're nervous, it trembles. and if you're, you feel the emotions and what the person is trying to convey. And for me, it's an extension from the material world into a world that is not tangible, a world that is also that slips through your pores. And that slipping through the pores allows you to feel and allows you to react. And that's why music is so important. And we're in a world that people are looking for something that allows them to feel alive.
Now, last year, I know you participated in this big artistic intervention around the UN General Assembly. It was called Future Ours, which put posters all over New York and in the UN as well to draw attention to the most pressing issues of our time. Your piece there is called Flow. It blends text and images. Tell us about what you were hoping to press upon the politicians and diplomats there.
Well, we all hope, I think, to be able to convey that we are not alone. And the way we behave on the planet, I feel that somehow we are parasites, parasiting on other things. And at the same time, we are extracting so much at a very fast rate. And for me, it's so important to be able to talk about leaving things to rest. And those things like trees, the water bodies, all kinds of other life forms need to also regenerate. So it's not about taking things out of the earth, that is the problem, but it's about the design of allowing things to grow and replenish and reform themselves. And that is something I'm very much interested in putting out in my work.
And also, that theme of extractivism is so present in so much of what you do, raising important questions about natural resources. And today, people are using artworks and galleries as tools for their activism against extractive practices. For example, the Just Stop Oil protests in galleries. How do you see that phenomenon?
Well, there are many ways of protesting. And some protests, I believe that protests should not come with damaging and destroying. I don't understand that. I believe that one can actually protest, and there are many places to protest. There are many companies to go and protest. There are many places where things can be poured on. But an artwork is meant as a place for us to engage with and look at things and make us reflect in the world. There are many parts of, the companies that will, Shell, can be a company that you go to protest on. They devastated the lands in Nigeria, but I don't think artworks should be the place that one should be doing that.
And looking back at your story, I know that you were born in Nigeria, where your family's from, and then you moved to Paris as a child, spent teenage years here, and then you went to the Beaux-Arts. How did France, Paris, that experience shape your view of the world of art?
Well, I think at a very young age, at the age of 10, 11, 12, to have that privilege to be able to see artwork stored in a monumental place, a beautiful place like the Louvre, Musée Guimet. We used to go from the British School, and often we used to go visiting this art spaces, this museums. And that really touched me, I learned about Georges de Latour, who's having an exhibition now, or about Caillebotte, and then also learned about the Dutch painters, Pieter de Hoogh, Vermeer, and you're watching in awe, or even Ingres with relation to sensuality, and then Musée Guimet, the sculptures coming from Asie, you know, all that. And I mean, that was a great privilege, and that helped me decide if I wanted to be an artist. Yeah.
Well, indeed, we asked you what's on your cultural radar at the moment, and you named an exhibition going on in Paris that's you're very keen to see, the work of Georges de la Tour.
Yes.
How do these 17th century paintings really speak to you?
They speak to me because they talk a lot about light. They talk about ways in which to capture the body, the sensuality of things, and also a lot of times formed in their time. You know, you're having the candlelight, and you didn't have electricity. You're having this light that is quite hard, you know, and you would have it falling on a body. You would have the softness. You have the way of they look at each other, the fabrics that drape. So there's a kind of mastery within this and the craftsmanship of that. And I remember as a kid just looking at that and saying, how do you do that? And I think that question of saying how and trying to understand a culture over time is something that has followed me through my life, and just asking the question why, how, and maybe it can be done. And then from there you can move on and you start making and trying and trying and trying again each time. So yeah.
And we see that research in your work. Thank you so much, Otobong, for joining us today.
I'm so happy. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll leave you with some of those Baroque masterpieces from the De la Tour exhibition currently showing at the Jacquemart-André Museum. Otherwise, do check in with us here next time on Arts 24. There's more news coming up just after this.